Leisure Suit Larry, a character that has become iconic because of how much of he's a lovable loser. That's what he is. His first romp in computer gaming came with Leisure Suit Larry 1 or Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards. And there is often so much that can be said about this particular game. Now, of course, this was released in 1987. Before we had VGA, we best had EGA at the time. VGA was just starting to come about. And it got remade in 1991 when Sierra was starting to more into more icon-based interfaces. And then it got remade again in 2013 thanks to crowdfunding efforts, and they added some more things to it. And this was actually the first in what became a series that initially didn't sell well. Never knew that until I actually read it. It's a game that a lot of people didn't, a lot of companies didn't want to sell because it was technically adult oriented. This didn't mean that, of course, that day and age, they didn't necessarily have any guidelines in that. Computer games were still becoming a new market, and stores outside of just devoted to electronics and that, not many carried them. I mean, I think the only place I remember first seeing it on a computer being a demo computer, for showing what games are out there, in a B. Dalton bookseller. That's the time we're thinking. I mean, bookstores would have computer games. Toys would have maybe a few computer games. They mainly more were consoles. So here we'd have pixelated nudity for the first time in computer games. And this game was actually a remake itself. Back in the days of the text parser games, there was a game that Sierra released called Soft Porn Adventure. Yeah. It was text. The only quote nudity you got was using your imagination. But it opened up a whole genre. Well, it opened up the way for such. As they were, quote, remaking it with graphics, they had to give your protagonist a name, a standalone name. I mean, the only games that Sierra had at that time that didn't have names to them was, character didn't have a name to him, was basically Space Quest, and that was it had a default name, but it allowed you to enter your own. So they had to come up with a name for the character. And according to one story I've read and heard, Larry's name came up in about two parts. First off, there was a guy at the Sierra offices that would constantly talk about his dating conquests. So we got Larry's first name as a parody of that guy's name. It also sort of helped, I guess, formulate some of the things that Larry could encounter. And then, to come across the second name, they literally wanted to go with something alliterative. And they went to the L Encyclopedia, basically opened it up to a random page to the last name of Laffer, who was the actual guy is a famous economist. He's the one who sold Reagan on the idea of trickle down economics, if you read some things. And so Larry Laffer was born. They gave Larry an appropriately ironic backstory. Larry was nearing 40. He lived a bit of a dull life, but he did have expertise in computers. About the only, quote, adult material he consumed was those issues of National Geographic that would, have the native girls and, you know, barely anything. And so he was the titular 40-year-old virgin before the movie made that a thing. Now, Larry had some backwards views or outdated views when it came to the dating scene. This is how out of touch the man was. Of course, this growing loneliness culminated in the most out of touch way. He believed that you need the pinnacle of fashion was the 1970s polyester leisure suit. He believed the most in music was disco. He, quote, completely missed the sexual revolution. And some of his dating sense is still stuck in the 70s. And he sold all his, quote, worldly possessions to buy the leisure suit and get a one-way trip to lost wages. And his mother, soon after, sold the home and got the hell away from there because even Larry was getting on her nerves. And this is where we open the first Leisure Suit Larry game. Larry is on a mission. He's about to turn 40. He wants to lose his virginity. And this is where we begin our farce on the dating world. Now, Larry's diving headfirst, completely blind, into the deep end of the dating pool, of the dating world, period. His social interactions are bare minimal. And he thinks the coolest, the best pickup lines is, "Hi, I'm Larry, Larry Laffer." Which, if you think about it, is a damn parody of how James Bond would introduce himself. Bond. James Bond. Of course, his alliterative name does not necessarily, may have a little bit of charm to it, and fits perfectly with the title. Leisure Suit of the first adventure, which is Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards. That's a lot of elves. Now, of course, this is a game that has a bit of a money economic to it. I mean, you obviously can't do much without funds, and you'll have to increase those funds. And you have to learn what you are dealing with. This game is divided into 3 sections, and you have to use a taxi to get between the sections, because the streets of Lost Wages are dangerous. In fact, in a memorable cutscene, death scene in the game, if you venture into the alley outside these areas and get the crap beat out of you, I mean, you get the crap beat out of you. You will encounter this thug. He will beat the crap out of you, take what he wants, leave you still fighting with yourself. You will collapse, quote, dead, where you will then be lowered into the processing factory after hearing somebody, "He messed up again!" To which you will see your character get reborn. And a little joke saying, "You see how much trouble we have to go through to get a new one out to you when you mess up?" So this helps draw in there that there is nothing but humor in this game. Yes, there is some adult humor, but these are the early days where even certain things are censored. So, of course, Larry arrives at Lefty's, and we include in there some humor with that too. I mean, you go into the bar, you got all your regular bar flies there. You got one lady at the bar. There's no chance with her. Larry sits down at the bar, and boom, we have someone talking to him. You're basically getting an incomplete joke from the guy, and the guy is supposed to be a parody of Ken Williams. Ken will show up in every game in one form or another, maybe even multiple forms. As we work our way through, muddle through, I mean, you get an order a drink. There is a Naugahyde door off to the side. You need a password to get in. Passwords Ken sent me. But you don't necessarily learn that until you find it in the bathroom. Yes, the bar has a bathroom. It is your typical bar bathroom. It's unisex. It's got a not totally functional toilet in it. You try flushing the toilet, it will back up and flood the whole room, and your life will pass before your eyes. You'll doze briefly before you snuff it. But this is how the game works. It's full of its humor. I mean, you got your typical parody of bathroom graffiti. Scott me up, be me. Or for a good time call. Stuff like that. Of course, you will find the interesting one somewhere on the wall Ken sent me. And it is then that you will get into the back room, which leads up to a hooker who, in typical comical fashion, you have to be careful when you have time with the hooker. Of course, you also have, if you look or do something like that, you'll get responses as like that are off, somewhat maybe off color, but definitely warns you that you need to have protection. Of course, you can also pay the pimp, or you could distract him. There's a way to distract him. Of course, then Larry should head off, but there are certain areas you will be visiting multiple times in this game. So then you can head off to one area, which is the convenience store and discotheque. And there's a phone outside the discotheque. This is actually the only working phone you'll find in the game. You can call a number that's on the side of the phone, and you'll take a quick survey. That will lead into something very steamy, a steamy phone call received on that phone later. And Larry, of course, will go into the convenience store. Of course, he'll get some important things there, which includes, an informative magazine that we all guys know that we get it for the articles. Yeah, right. Sure. And of course, you have to buy your quote protection there. And for anyone who has, anybody who is a first time or maybe has purchased it multiple times in their lives, uh, let's put it this way. They will do the 360-degree head turn. Give the fear that you're doing something illegal or something don't want to, anybody who knows you to know you're purchasing. And you look around your store, noting that it is completely and utterly empty, and you make the purchase, answering question after question after question. All this to build up to an epic delivery where our clerk states everything about the protection you've gotten, causing about a dozen people to stick their heads out of the aisles, even aisles that you've gone by and, of course, could see nobody's there, nobody's here, nobody's here, nobody's here, and proclaim, "What a pervert." I will tell you that this is probably the first thought that goes in the head of anybody first time buying those items. Even if they're out in the open and you can pick them up. I mean, it's the kind of thing if you're going to walk in, you're going to satiate your curiosity. Even if you're not buying anything, you sometimes you look around twice to see if anybody's watching you enter the place. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happens. So, you have to do this stuff. You have to, I mean, this is something that goes through anything. So, there's some relatable experiences in this. Of course, when you realize your funds are starting to get low, you want to head to the casino and play some games of chance using save scumming because it is literally it's one of those things. This would be a game where a no loads, no save challenge would be cruel. Of course, once you got your funds up, you go back, get a few little items there that you're going to need. You'll go back to lefties with your protection and have some time with the hooker. This is, of course, covered by a big sensor block when you play the game. Because it's not until later, much later in this game franchise that you get a good idea of, or a more provocative view. Now, of course, that satisfies the first part of what you want to do. Of course, you want to have a little bit more meaning to it. I mean, it's a little bit different than have a one night stand with a working girl is a little bit more different than a one night stand with someone that you're trying to actually score with. That's the difference here. We're talking the dating lifestyle. So, Larry returns to the discotheque area with one of the some items he's found, and we meet Fawn, who is, quote, a looker, and can't say no to gifts. She is a material girl. I also personally think she's running a scam. I mean, after presenting her with gifts that you've found, which includes a rose, candy, and a ring, she'll agree to, quote, sleep with you. However, she wants to be married first. So, of course, you give her money to, rent the Quickie Wed Chapel that is right next door to the casino. You go there. You basically hook up. Well, you get married, you go to the honeymoon suite in the hotel, which for some reason I find, and I'm not sure if this is because of the ironic planning, but it's on the fourth floor. I mean, honeymoon suites should usually have a top floor at least, so you have a nice view outside if you want to look outside. That's my opinion. But, that's it. It's an opinion in my point. Of course, she's not necessarily overly in the mood until you get some champagne there. Which again, you have to go to the only working phone, which is far away, and you can't transfer liquor from one location to another because the taxi driver will snatch it up, drink it down, and then public service announcement: don't drink and drive. And of course, it's delivered by the hottest delivery guy they have. Which fun has no trouble having a night with them, having some time, having a quickie with them. Of course, after has had some wine, have some champagne, and you're about to consummate the marriage, well, that goes awry. She basically takes the ribbons on the harp-shaped bed and basically ties you down with them and leaves you pretty much with an empty wallet, except for the mad money you keep behind the one photo or in the secret compartment. Which, yes, that's a thing. It's an old practice. So once Larry is successful at getting out of that, which would require befriending a local bum, Larry can also use this ribbon now to acquire something that he saw outside the hooker's place. Of course, if you go all the way to the top of the elevator, which you will eventually have to do in Lost Wages, you can actually find another lovely young lady named Faith. She is acting as the guard for a penthouse elevator. And she's very faithful to her boyfriend. Now, of course, Larry will find the famous aphrodisiac by using a left-handed hammer with his right hand, which does absolutely nothing to change its functionality. Honestly, that's probably one of the biggest gimmicks I have ever heard of. And they utilize such a thing in so many games out there. I mean, how do you foul up a person who's left-handed? Give them a right-handed tool. Honestly. Guy can't sculpt because he's lost his left-handed hammer. But his twin can use it because they're right-handed. Anyhow. Of course, this is to get the famous aphrodisiac, which has which the label only reads ish fl. And this is a proof where Larry is not as dangerous as others might be out there. He's not about to, quote, slip it to him. He will present it. Which actually Faith loves that stuff. And after downing a couple, she's like, I gotta get to my boyfriend. And this allows Larry to now access the penthouse. Up there is where you will find the final, quote, conquest in the original and remake. Eve. Of course, sneaking up to the penthouse uninvited, that is a bit on the creepy side. Of course, it could be said that in some ways Eve has to commend on the bravery and of someone coming up there. And Larry, of course, in his inept way, manages to charm her. It takes a special gift to give to a woman named Eve, and which the characters then, we have the big finale with some appropriate joking in there, and but no stock footage yet because we're not that we're not that adept yet in computer games at the time. Just fireworks. And this is where the game ends, although you have a little bit of a sales pitch from Al Lowe, who walks out of the nearby closet to tell you all about, the other products they release and to get to buy the game, any other games. It's a game that has its charm, even though it is so, quote, in the wrong nowadays. But I think what's lovable of it is that, Larry is your pathetic loser. He is so out of touch. It's against the odds that he would find a way to be with a woman. You want to cheer for him. And for some guys that are like me and didn't have much confidence, you see this complete and utter loser still manage to, get with a woman and like, oh, this putz can do it, so can I. It's like a confidence builder. Larry is the antithesis of the dating world. Antithesis. He is so out of touch. He is literally an expert at pulling defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, literally. He just fumbled. He would be the one to miraculously catch a 70-yard pass right near the end zone, and before he can cross into the end zone, fumble the ball. That's the kind of person we're talking about. And literally, it is taken the whole the game is a joke on the dating lifestyle with some relatable humor in it. I mean, the nervousness of buying your first prophylactic. the cluelessness of the first time in the bar, where everybody is just like, we got a live one. Where they'll probably might look over at the barkeep and like, make sure you have the top shelf ready, so that when you foolishly order a round of drinks on you, they'll clean you out. Some of the solutions to get it, to advancing are downright hilarious. I mean, to get past a pimp, to get past, get out of paying a pimp, you basically turn the channel until you find the most hardcore pay-per-view channel that isn't pay-per-view. I mean, he'll be distracted, not too distracted to not open the door, but he'll be so distracted he won't charge you. And the simple fact that having unprotected relations with the hooker could lead to a very painful and devastating end for a number of guys. I mean, the game is full of subtle humor and just outright in your face humor. For it is no wonder why some marketing basically puts it as a harmless, humorous adult endeavor. And also, since there was no quote rating system back when it originally came out, it's how kids in school got talking about this game. And yes, I was in ninth grade and we were talking about this game years after it had been released. Well, 2 years after it was released. So, it's a game that had an impact. And even now, if you get past that, it's literally not something to play in front of your parents, unless you're older. It's one of those things that make people want, like, it's someone who takes it too realistically, or can't, blur the line between that we wouldn't even get this. But I mean, part of the charm. He's a loser. And that's all I'm going to say about Leisure Suit Larry 1. I would recommend playing it, more so for the humor that's involved. Some of the logic's pretty sound. But also to check out the other games, and I'm going to be playing through all those. I enjoy playing through them. But like I said, that's all I'm going to say about Leisure Suit Larry 1. Come check out the gameplay, get the game for yourself. And next time around, I don't know what I'll be talking about. Next game I finish then. Have fun all, and bye!